What's next for the webhead as he heads back into action and looks for things to return to normal in his second MCU solo film? We've got all the answers you're looking for with this look at everything you need to know before watching Spider-Man: Far From Home. One of the most compelling things about Spider-Man: Far From Home will be how Marvel chooses to handle their first film after the incredibly disruptive events of Avengers: Endgame. Far From Home will definitely be more modest in scale compared to the cosmic events of Endgame, Infinity War, and Captain Marvel. Peter's going to Europe, not space. But it can't ignore the effects of the last two Avengers films. Far From Home will be the first time Marvel really shows us what the MCU looks like after the Infinity Saga. One of the biggest effects that Endgame had on the MCU was a sudden jump 5 years into the future. Endgame co-directors Anthony and Joe Russo have confirmed that the time jump means those who were saved from Thanos' initial snap ended up 5 years younger than everyone that had survived. It appears from the Spider-Man: Far From Home trailers that many of Peter Parker's closest friends and classmates still seem to be around the same age, which indicates that they were probably all dusted together. Best pals Ned and Peter and apparently Mary Jane were all snapped, and will consequently still be the same age going into Far From Home. Perhaps the biggest can of worms that Endgame opened up was the concept of time travel, which inevitably leads to the multiverse. It was already difficult to contain the effects of time travel and the various branch realities it creates within the plot of Endgame on its own. The alterations it can create could begin to make the MCU continuity start to feel a bit like herding cats. Marvel's steering right into the skid, though.
We could have used someone like you on my world.
Your world? Beck is from Earth, just not ours.
The hard left into the multiverse concept is impressive, but the question is, will it hold up this many years into a universe that has barely sniffed at any of these concepts up until now? And is Mysterio even telling the truth about where he's from? Historically, Quentin Beck has been a master of illusion and misdirection, and Mysterio is well known as one of Spider-Man's classic antagonists, even though the trailers are clearly spinning him as more of a hero. Common sense would dictate that the promotional footage is simply warming up a character that loves to fool others, and that he will ultimately be revealed as a villain. Marvel and Disney have become quite good at promotional misdirects themselves, with multiple trailers that have misled or outright lied to fans. When you consider that Marvel also basically rewrote the entire script on the Skrulls in Captain Marvel, flipping them from evil aliens to sympathetic refugees, it makes the entire Mysterio situation a bit of an enigma. It's worth noting that the notion that Mysterio has heroic aspirations is also seemingly a sort of in-joke. Jake Gyllenhaal, who plays Beck, came tantalizingly close to taking over the role of Spider-Man after Tobey Maguire sustained a back injury between the first and second Sam Raimi-directed films. Mysterio crosses paths with Peter Parker because of the looming threat of the Elementals, a trio of destructive beings wreaking havoc. They appear to be composed of water, fire, and earth. According to a Screen Rant set report, Far From Home will reveal the origins of these additions to Spidey's rogues gallery. And there's also evidence to suggest that they're tied in some way to the classic comics villains Sandman, Molten Man, and Hydro Man. It's easy to assume that Mysterio is really behind the whole thing, but however the story ends up breaking down, Spider-Man will have his webs full when it comes to bad guys this time around. There will never be another Tony Stark, but it looks like the MCU is angling to have Spider-Man fill an important need following Stark's death in Endgame.
I just really miss him.
Yeah, I miss him too.
Parker has typically been portrayed as a young man both in print and on screen, and the idea of him looking up to a mentor or wanting to impress other superheroes is hardly a new concept. In the MCU in particular, Iron Man has always been the hero that has stood tallest in Parker's eyes, beginning all the way back in Iron Man 2. Parker is unlikely to ever become Iron Man.
I'd rather just stay on the ground for a little while. Friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
But it seems likely that he'll be called on to step into the gap left by Stark's death. The move would be a natural one considering their history and would make for good storytelling as Parker processes his loss and is faced with some of the less savory elements of the superhero life. Far From Home promises to introduce several new Spidey suits. While we already know from the trailers that we'll get to see the Iron Spider armor from the Avengers films, there have also been hints of upgrades to the more classic look, as well as an entirely black stealth suit, a S.H.I.E.L.D.-inspired outfit that takes quite a bit of inspiration from the uniforms of past agents, including Black Widow and Hawkeye. Executive producer Eric Carroll explained that while the suit was originally pretty high-tech, they ended up dumbing it down quite a bit. It was too high-powered, so the filmmakers ended up making it, quote, less cool to better fit Parker's character. When you see him flipping up those goggles by hand, know that it's absolutely on purpose. Tom Holland's favorite thing about the suit? It makes it a lot easier for the poor guy to use the bathroom between takes. Sony, not Marvel Studios, owns the rights to Spider-Man, along with quite a few related characters. There was a harrowing moment in 1999 when Marvel actually offered nearly all of its existing characters to Sony for a paltry sum. While Sony only nabbed the rights to Spidey and Friends, the webhead was still sorely missed when the MCU took off in earnest.
Underoos!
In 2015, Sony and Marvel struck a unique shared custody deal that allowed Peter Parker to show up in multiple MCU films while remaining a property of Sony. A lot about that deal remains unknown to the public, with Vanity Fair having referred to the arrangement as being, quote, densely complicated. Some outlets have reported that the deal could be up after Far From Home, which might leave an interesting question mark at the end of Parker's adventures abroad. Will this be the last we see of the crime-fighting Spider in the MCU? Is the current deal still going? Or will Sony and Marvel hammer out a new agreement, keeping the shared custody arrangement going indefinitely? The question is a big one, as it'll determine whether Spidey will be an important part of the MCU in the years to come, or if Far From Home will be Tom Holland Spidey's swan song. Spider-Man: Far From Home is the official end cap for Phase 3 of the MCU, and it'll also be the last time a Marvel movie is released for nearly a year. Far From Home swings into theaters on July 2nd, 2019, and the next Marvel movie won't be released until May 1st, 2020. That's 304 days without a new Marvel movie, the longest gap in quite some time.
Parker, you're late, man! Always late!
The good news is, once the dust of Phase 3 finally settles, we're likely to get quite a bit more info on what's coming. The soon-to-launch Disney Plus streaming service will likely help fill in some of the gaps. Fans who plan on subscribing should be able to get a bit of a fix in some way or another, whether that's through watching past Marvel movies or indulging in the various MCU-related limited series that Marvel is producing for the platform. But Far From Home is our last chance to enjoy the MCU on the big screen for nearly a year, so take advantage while you can. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about Spider-Man are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.